Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate Day number 699 at 699er. February the 20th, 2019, Wednesday. That's right, Wednesday. That's the day I take out the trash and have some pasta. And tonight will be no different. Taking out the trash and having some pasta. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let's get to it. Okay, so everybody's reporting today. Hey, guess what? Rodenstein, he's leaving in March. He's leaving in March? Huh? Because, it seems to me that after the revelations by Andy McCabe, that Mr. Barr would have gone to his office the following morning and said, I got a big problem. McCabe was just on TV last night and said that Rodenstein talked at least twice about wearing a wire to entrap the president. I better have a talk with Rodenstein, seeing as how he's the guy who appointed the special counsel and is overseeing the whole thing. Sounds kind of fishy. It's a big problem. So it just seems to me that Barr should have, day one when he got into work after McCabe's interview on 60 Minutes, he should have picked up the phone and called Rodenstein. Said, hey Rod, I need you to come over to my office. We need to talk. And he should have asked Rodenstein directly, is this true? At which point Rodenstein's got a couple choices. He can say, it's true. I did it. Or he can say, no, that's a lie. Unfortunately, that won't really work because there's too many witnesses, other people who've talked about it. And there's also, we know other people were present in the meeting. And it's just a matter of time before Mr. Barr, if he looked into it, would find out who was in that meeting. He would go talk to them, and they would have a bunch of people that would say, yeah, Rodenstein actually did say that. Not just once, but twice, or however many times. And Rodenstein would be in deep shit. So it seems to me that when you learn that the current Deputy AG was seriously talking about wearing a wire, and I don't think you can say he was joking, because now it appears that he brought it up twice. According to McCabe, he brought it up twice. First time, maybe, could have been a joke, even though everyone says it wasn't. Only Rodenstein says it was a joke. Everyone else said, no, he was dead serious. But when you bring it up twice, it's hard to pass it off as a joke. So I guess what surprises me, everyone's surprised that Rodenstein is leaving in March. That doesn't surprise me. We knew that Barr was going to appoint his own deputy, and that would be the end of Rodenstein. That was no surprise to me. What's surprising to me is that they're waiting till March. I would think that Rodenstein would have been out on his ass this morning, or Tuesday morning, Monday morning, the day after the Face the Nation interview. He should have been fired and under immediate investigation. So that's why I'm surprised. Okay, it looks like it's going to be Jeffrey Rosen who's going to be the Deputy AG replacing Rodenstein. He is currently the Deputy Transportation Secretary. Also, we're hearing that Rodenstein is supposed to be leaving about the same time that Uncle Bob ends his investigation. So a lot of people are speculating that Uncle Bob is going to be ending his investigation about the second week of March, which is when Rodenstein is supposed to leave. Again, these are all what people are saying. I'll believe Uncle Bob is done when I actually see he's done. Until then, I have no idea if he's done or not. We'll find out. Now Rodenstein is obviously done, but that's because Barr wants to name his own Deputy AG. But it appears that Rosen has worked with Barr, and keep in mind, I'm not a huge fan of Barr. He looks like just another deep state DOJ guy to me. I could be wrong, but I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt because I'm quite jaded with this group. So I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt. I don't think that Barr will do anything because he thinks it's the right thing to do. He may have to do something because he has no choice, because there's so much out in the public arena that he simply can't ignore it. He'll be forced to do something. What that something is unclear right now, but I think people are going to have to go to jail here. I don't think it's possible to orchestrate a coup and have people get off with a hand slap. So that's my thoughts now, but I don't think it's because Barr is, this straight up guy. I just, maybe he is, but we'll find out. So anyway, Rosen worked with Barr at the law firm Kirkland and Ellis, so they know each other well. Rosen was also a senior policy advisor to W. Bush. That's right, George W. Bush. So Rosen, obviously, like Barr, Barr served in the Bush 41 administration. Rosen served in the Bush 43 administration. Both of them look like deep staters to me. I don't have a high level of confidence in either of them, but I do have a high level of confidence in Trump and a high level confidence that when enough information comes into the public domain and people clearly understand exactly what happened here, and it's becoming quite clear to many people at this point, and we're just about at that tipping point, if not there already, when that happens, these people will have no choice but to take action. But it won't be because they're such upstanding individuals. It will be because of public pressure and the president getting personally involved. That's my opinion. So McCabe was on the Today Show yesterday, and he dug the hole even deeper. This guy should really shut up. I mean, he's already, I don't know, maybe it can't get any worse. He's probably already looking at spending the rest of his life in prison if he's actually charged and found guilty of sedition, which I believe he'll certainly be charged with crimes. I don't know if it'll be sedition, but, he's in a lot of trouble, and he just keeps digging the hole deeper. He described in this interview with CBS the fact that he did this Gang of Eight briefing. Now, he misled the interviewer, and she let him off the hook, either because she's just not terribly brilliant, or she's on the team, if you know what I mean. So he's telling this reporter at CBS that he briefed the Gang of Eight about the ongoing investigations. The question was about the investigation into Trump. But if McCabe had briefed the Gang of Eight about investigating Trump, and this would have been in May of 2017, Devin Nunes was on the Gang of Eight. And he wasn't recused at that time. He would have been on that Gang of Eight and would have been in that briefing. Do you think for a minute that if Devin Nunes had been briefed by McCabe that they were investigating Trump in May of 2017, that Nunes would still be wandering around requesting documents, doing interviews, and trying to figure out exactly what had been going on? I don't think so. He would have told us. Well, he actually couldn't tell us, which is the other problem McCabe has. He couldn't tell us because the things that occur, the matters that are discussed in those Gang of Eight briefings are classified. You're not allowed to talk about these things in an unclassified setting. So Nunes would not be able to come right out and say, yeah, McCabe told us they were investigating Trump back in May of 2017 in a Gang of Eight briefing. He would not be able to do that, but he would probably be able to give some indications about this so that we would have some idea. But as we now see, McCabe has come out and told CBS, in fact, about this Gang of Eight briefing. And again, the question was about investigating Trump. But McCabe never says that he actually briefed the Gang of Eight on investigating Trump. He briefed them on ongoing investigations. Could have been talking about people around Trump or Russia investigations or whatever. So he muddies up the water here so that he distorts it so that the reporter let him off the hook. She should have come back to him directly after he gave that answer, came back to him again and said, no. Did you inform the Gang of Eight specifically that you were investigating Trump? She did not do that, so we're left hanging in the air. But obviously, we can figure out that if McCabe had told them that he was investigating Trump, Nunes would know that. He was on the Gang of Eight. And Nunes wouldn't be acting the way he's acting if he had been told this back in May of 2017. So obviously, you can figure out that McCabe did not tell them that he was that they were investigating Trump in 2017, May of 2017. Here's the other problem that McCabe has. He just told a CBS reporter and described what they talked about in a Gang of Eight meeting, which is classified. So he just violated the Espionage Act. He just violated the law by telling a reporter on TV about a classified briefing. You're not allowed to do that. So it just gets worse and worse for McCabe. And another thing that's quite funny about this whole interview, as well as the one from 60 Minutes that the mainstream media completely is devoid of, is the fact that in both of those interviews, McCabe stressed that the biggest concern that he had and everyone around him had was Trump and Russia. Trump and Russia. Yet there's no real evidence other than the dossier of anything about Trump or Russia, other than the fact that Manafort worked for the Ukrainians who were supported by the Russians or whatever. But these are all things that lobbyists do and politicians do, and Trump has no ties to Manafort. Manafort came in and worked on his campaign for 2 months because he's a guy who knows how to count delegates and secure delegates. They don't know each other, never did. And there's no evidence that they ever discussed anything about Trump-Russia. Nothing like that. But it's just very funny that the news media doesn't seem to be curious at all. Nor did Andy McCabe seem to be concerned at all about our big, most feared enemy, Russia, which is obviously bullshit. And it even tells you that even McCabe would say that shows that he is not really, he's not really as smart as he pretends to be, and he's obviously way off when he says that Russia's our biggest enemy or whatever. That's crazy. Russia is, they've got a very tiny little economy. They have a whole lot of problems. They're, to look at them as our number one threat is ridiculous, man. Especially, we've been told for the past 20 years now that it's Al-Qaeda and terrorists and Muslim extremists. We were told they were our biggest threat. But if you want to look at an actual player on the stage that really is the number one threat to the United States, it would be China, not Russia. Not even close. China is 1,000 times more a threat to the United States than Russia. China is a threat to our economy. They're a threat to our technology sector. They're a threat to everything. I mean, they're a far more formidable opponent to us than Russia. Russia's, they got nukes. But other than that, they're a regional power. They have a tiny little economy, and they've got a lot of problems. So but McCabe, he's all worried about Russia and the fact that Trump, by some distant relation between Manafort or Carter Page or someone, might have some connection to Russia, yet he completely ignores the fact that Bill Clinton went and gave a speech in Russia and got $500,000, and at the same time he went and had a personal visit with Putin in his home. He then gave, and the speech that Clinton was paid $500,000 for was to a bunch of Russian oligarchs who are all friends of Putin, and then shortly thereafter, those individuals made $145 million in contributions to the Clinton Foundation, which was followed by the Right Reverend Clinton as Secretary of State and other people in the Obama administration signing off on turning over 25% of America's uranium, while the FBI had their own damn informant inside the ring who was telling them that the Russians knew that they could play the Clintons on this, and that the Clintons knew they were being played. They didn't care. They played along with the game because it made Clinton $500,000 in his pocket and $145,000 in the Clinton Foundation. But none of these things seem to worry McCabe about the Russians. They have apparently the Clintons' involvement with the Russians and actual close ties and actual deals with the Russians, taking actual money from Russians, people close to Putin. None of that bothers CBS. None of that bothers 60 Minutes. None of that bothered Andy McCabe and the FBI. But they were bothered by the fact that Trump went to his Miss Universe pageant in Moscow for 24 hours, where there was someone with him almost the entire time. And no evidence whatsoever has been involved in any type of collusion or activity with the Russians. Assuming that was not completely nuts anyway. Putin and Trump knew that the Rotten Reverend wasn't going to campaign in Wisconsin. They knew she wasn't going to be able to win Pennsylvania. They knew that someone was going to give these emails to WikiLeaks and it was going to matter. Come on, man. McCabe is simply lying his ass off. These guys are caught red-handed, and now they're reaching for anything. But when he actually gets into a court or anywhere, and there's a lawyer there with a lick of sense in his head, Every one of these things that he and Comey and all his friends have all tried to put up, which will work in the media because the media is on their team and will not ask questions back, will not ask follow-up questions like I just did. But if I'm the attorney, and I could assume that whoever may be in the courtroom will be 1,000 times better lawyer than I am, will find these obvious things right here and will point all these out, and these people will be made to look very stupid and very negligent, and they will be, of course, proven to be criminals, and will, I believe, end up in jail. A lot of them. Hey, guess what? Commie Bernie, has thrown his hat into the ring officially. Well, what does that mean? Well, here's my initial take on that, without having really thought this through a whole lot, just off the top of my head. This is very bad for Warren, Chief Spreading Bull, Elizabeth Warren, and it's very bad for Kamala Harris, because they are the two that's kind of been trying to play to the Bernie crowd, and using a lot of his rhetoric, talking about the same thing, $15 an hour minimum wage, Medicare for all, free this, free that, free everything. It's really been Chief Spreading Bull and Kamala Harris that have really been trying to occupy the Bernie territory and take the Bernie voters. So now that Bernie is actually in for real, that's going to hurt those two. So I think you could almost say goodbye to Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren, because now Bernie's in there and he's going to suck up all that money, and Bernie will raise millions and millions and millions of dollars, and he will become the front runner. Bernie will be the front runner. Now Biden will probably still be the top front runner, but he hasn't thrown his hat in yet. I think he'll probably be forced to at some point, but he hasn't yet. And we don't know who the DNC really supports, because the DNC, they don't put their ringer in usually until later. The ringer comes in later from the DNC. They let these people go out and beat each other to death for a few months, and then they put the ringer in. Maybe it's the Rotten Reverend Clinton. She's vying for that position, but I think that they would probably go with Biden over the Rotten Reverend. But you never know, because her people are hard at work too, because as soon as Bernie announced the Rotten Reverend's point man, Mr. Raines, Philip Raines, he came out and attacked Bernie hardcore with a couple of other Hillary acolytes. So Hillary's definitely got her acolytes out there ready to pounce on Bernie immediately. They didn't wait an hour before Hillary's acolytes pounced on Bernie. That tells me that the Rotten Reverend Clinton is lurking in the weeds waiting to make her move. The DNC is probably not totally on board with her. They were probably trying to get Biden. But if they can't get Biden, they might turn back to the Rotten Reverend. I can tell you they won't go with Bernie. And that brings up the next point that's going to happen. Bernie is going to be destroyed. The DNC let him off the hook the last time because they didn't want to have to hurt the Democratic Party, and then they forced he and Hillary to make a pact that they would both sit on the real damaging information they had on each other, so they didn't do harm to the party and cost the party the election, which they lost anyway. But that was the plan. But now there's no reason to do that. Now they have plenty of stuff on Bernie. We've all seen the videotape of Bernie marching, carrying the communist flag and marching in the communist parades and such. There's a lot of things on Bernie, and I believe that they will destroy Bernie because he will actually be a threat this time, because he might actually eclipse Biden for now, because he's thrown his hat in the ring and people are going to start donating and talking and getting all energetic. So Bernie might become the front runner temporarily, but as soon as Biden jumps in, he will immediately be quite a few points, I think, above Bernie. And it'll really be between Bernie and Biden. It's coming down to Bernie or Biden, and if they can't get Biden to throw his hat in, then they'll probably turn back to the Rotten Reverend. I can assure you the Democratic donors and the corporate DNC people are not going to back Bernie Sanders. I can assure you that. They will destroy him if they have to. But Bernie doesn't care. He's quite aware that he's not going to win. He's just out there to see how much money he can pull down this time. I mean, it worked last time. He made a fortune last time. And he also knows that this time, once he finishes up and grows his donor list, which is where the real value is to Bernie Sanders, he's got a huge donor list of people who love to donate money to him. So what they really want. And so Bernie probably is just sitting back thinking, is it 7 or 8 figures that he's looking at to cash out at the end of this to give up his donor list, which is exactly what he'll do. He'll cash out his donor list at the end after they destroy him, which they will. And he doesn't care, because he's just in it for the money. Because he's a commie. They love money, especially other people's money, when they don't have to work for it. So that's my take on the Bernie thing. That's what I think you should look for there. Trump says that Robert, the skateboarder, Bobby O'Rourke, ended his political career by his comment to take down all walls. Yeah, and then Kamala Harris came out and seconded that motion, and Gillibrand is also thinking that might be a good idea. They're going nowhere, of course, except for out of the race now that Bernie's in, and Biden's probably coming along soon. And you still have, a couple of billionaires sitting out there talking about it. You got Bloomberg and you got this guy Schultz still talking about it. Of course, he wants to run as independent. Oh, by the way, Bernie is running as a Democrat. He's not running as an independent. He's going to be running for the Democratic nomination. Okay, here's the latest on our good friend Smollett, the fearmonger. Okay, so the fearmonger apparently has a history of lying to the police. That's coming out now that he's been proven to have lied to the police before during a DUI arrest and another issue he had with the police where he's lied to them before. So they're used to the fearmonger, Mr. Smollett, lying to them. And it appears that the FBI is investigating whether Jussie played a role in sending threatening letter to Empire, that TV show, which was addressed to him, by the way. Apparently a couple of months back, in fact, quite a few months back, January the 22nd, I guess. Oh no, that's weeks ago. Just weeks ago. January the 22nd, someone sent a letter to the TV show Empire addressed to the fearmonger, Jussie Smollett. And apparently they used like cutouts from magazines and drew like stick figures and him being hanged and all kind of stuff. And it was kind of creepy or whatever. And now they're investigating whether he may have been behind sending that as well. And so they've got the letter at the FBI lab, and they've also gone to the two Nigerians who are not Nigerians. And they have gone to them, and they've gotten magazines and things where things have been cut out of magazines, and now they've got the magazines that they're also looking at as well to see if the cutouts in magazines match what was in the letter. My guess is it's going to. And he had also included a white substance in the letter, which turned out to be aspirin. This guy is a real trick, is he not? And now we're getting rumors that the TV show Empire is cutting the fearmonger, Mr. Smollett. They're cutting his lines, cutting his scenes out of their TV show. And like I said yesterday, he's done. He's all done. Well, there is now video of Ruth Buzzy Ginsburg being helped through Reagan International Airport. And it's a very short video, about 7-8 seconds. She looks very, very weak and frail. There's a woman to her right who's like having to like walk her, and then there's a couple like looks like Secret Service or whatever protection around her, staying pretty close to her. She is asked a question about how she is, and she says she's fine. That's all she says. But she looks really, really bad to me. I mean, she looks like she's really, really old. She don't look like she's got much spark in her step anymore. And so the old gal is giving it hell, but she is alive, obviously, because we now have video from just recently. Of course, we talked about a week ago when Kamala Harris went on the radio and committed a pretty major gaffe when she talked about the fact that she smoked pot and did inhale. But she referenced it to a time period which was inconsistent with history. She talked about listening to Snoop Dogg and some other rapper and Tupac. And, of course, they weren't even, in the business at that time or weren't famous or whatever. So now they're trying to find out exactly what time period it was that she was smoking the dope. And it appears now people are wanting to know, and they're asking her whether or not she was smoking when she was smoking weed when she was a prosecutor. Because that's when Snoop and Tupac were popular, and she was a prosecutor at that time. So they want to know if she was smoking weed as a prosecutor, which is a real problem because she put a lot of people in jail for smoking weed. She was opposed to marijuana legalization and was a hardliner against it back at the time when she was a prosecutor. We'll see how that works out. Let's see, the Washington Post has compared Trump to Hitler because of the wall between East and West Germany, and that was an op-ed. That should not surprise us, but That's okay because Washington Post is probably going to be out of business pretty soon anyway. And I'll tell you why shortly. Let's see. Trump speech. Yes, Trump gave another speech, and he, again, spent most of the time talking about the problems with socialism. And just as I told you, like the night after the speech he gave at the border, when he made that, and during the State of the Union when he talked about socialism, Trump's already decided how he's going to win in 2020. He is going to define his Democrat opponent as a socialist. Doesn't matter who it is. He doesn't care who it is. Bernie, Kamala, Hillary, it doesn't matter. He knows they all have to run hard left to get the nomination. And when they do, they're running right into the socialist camp. So all he has to do is say, they're a socialist. Socialism. Do you want socialism? That's all he has to do to win big in 2020. Define his opponent as a socialist, which won't be hard to do, and he'll win. That's why he's going to be talking about socialism from now until 2020. Jeff Carlson was written a story talking about McCabe and pointing out some things about the 60 Minutes interview and maybe even the CBS. I don't know exactly what he's referring to. But a lot of these things I talked about, but I'll just hit on these very quickly about some things that he mentioned. Because Jeff Carlson's always a very good person to read. He's a very good person to read up on and read the things he says because he's very logical. He's very good at tying facts together. I went through a lot of these, but let's go ahead and go through them again. This time Jeff Carlson's take instead of my take. So Jeff Carlson on McCabe, and I think he's referencing mainly what he was talking about on 60 Minutes, but probably some other things too. So he was talking about the interview. I think in this particular thing, he's talking about the interview with 60 Minutes, all the things that were not brought up. Like I just brought up the fact that they never talked about all the things that the Rotten Reverend Clinton and Bill Clinton were involved in terms of their relationship with Russia, meetings with Russians, money flying back and forth between the Clintons and Russia, and all these things. But Carlson certainly brings up the fact that they never asked Andy McCabe about any of the conversations and things that were going on with Peter's Been Stroking Us and Lisa Page. And he was essentially their boss. Never was he asked about all their biased statements at all. Never. Even though he was essentially their boss. They never mentioned anything about the insurance policy that Lisa Page talked about that she and Peter's Been Stroking Us discussed in Andy's office. They never brought that up. The insurance policy. None of this was mentioned in the 60 Minutes interview. Or the fact that that McCabe was under grand jury investigation. They never asked at all McCabe about the dossier. Or never drilled down specifically on the evidence that they used. They really let McCabe off the hook very light. The only thing McCabe really told him was, yeah, well, he made some statements. He believed Putin more than he believed the CIA. He said this in a campaign speech. You cannot launch criminal investigation of the president because of those types of things. That's just, it's crazy. But 60 Minutes let him get away with that, and they never pressed on what we all know is the real issue, the dossier. Even though McCabe's already told Congress that no dossier, no FISA. Or the fact that it was paid for by Hillary. Or the fact that he signed off on the first FISA warrant, which was based on the dossier, and we know that. They never asked him about the role of Bruce Orr or his wife Nellie. They never asked McCabe about about the firing of Christopher Steele, and then the FBI re-engaging Steele using Bruce Orr as an intermediary. They never pushed back on McCabe when they were talking about why he was fired, and he basically said, well, I was fired because I investigated Trump. No, that's not why you were fired, and they let him off the hook on that. Of course, they never asked him about the leak dispute, where McCabe says that Comey authorized him to have Lisa Page write those stories and leak them to Devlin Barrett at the Wall Street Journal. McCabe says that Comey authorized that. Comey says he did not. They never asked McCabe about that. They never asked McCabe why he launched the investigation after he told Congress that Trump did not impede the investigation. Under oath, he told them that. 5 days after telling them that. They didn't ask him about the fact that both Strzok and Page discussed that there wasn't any evidence of Trump collusion in May of 2017, which is the exact time when McCabe launched these investigations. And they were working for him. They would have known. And they never talked about the fact that McCabe himself was removed from the investigation by Rodenstein shortly after he put it into motion. None of these things were brought up by Scott Pelley on 60 Minutes. It was a sham interview, as I told you yesterday. Well, another thing I mentioned yesterday was this lawyer, Lynn Wood, who's handling the case for Mr. Sandman, one of the Catholic high school kids that was defamed by just about everybody in Hollywood, the media, and everyone else. And I told you that this guy goes for big money. He doesn't go for small settlements. He deals in hundreds of millions, not a few million. And you can see, if you look at his bio, all the cases he's won. He only takes cases he can win. Now, we know two things now about Lynn Wood. He is going to be serving over 50 people, and that would include entire organizations. Individuals like Alyssa Milano, various other people like these Hollywood idiots, Cher. All these people are going to get served and sued. And also he's suing large media organizations. And today, we now have the first media organization they have been served, you might say. And that is the Washington Post. The Washington Post has been served by Lynn Wood. He's suing them for defamation on behalf of his client, Nick Sandman. And he's suing them for $250 million. $250 million. Now, I believe he got over 100 from Richard Jewell. And he says that in the case of Sandman, he will require much more payment because Sandman was a minor. And this is actually a much easier case to prove than the Richard Jewell case, with all the video evidence that's out there. I expect that the Washington Post is going to most likely settle. They'll probably settle for somewhere in the $150 to $200 million range. It's going to cost them. They may be out of business. They'll be making a lot of cuts and firing a lot of people, that's for sure. And this is exactly what should happen to them. It's going to take a big hit at the Washington Post, and the New York Times and many other media organizations are right behind, and people like Alyssa Milano and Cher and some of these other idiot Hollywood people, they better get out their checkbooks too. And they may have to actually go get jobs after this is over, because he's probably going to bankrupt a lot of these Hollywood celebrities. Here's a good question for you that you might want to chew on for 24 hours. Did Obama bug the White House before leaving? Did Obama bug the White House before leaving? That's a very good question. And the reason some people are wondering is just looking back now at a lot of the things that have been talked about, a lot of things that Trump said in tweets, and something that occurred back about the time he was making all these tweets not too long after he came into the White House. And that is that immediately, almost after coming into the White House, a couple months later, he had this entire room where most of the time presidents sit at this table. It's their dinner table. It's not in the Oval Office. It's down the hall from the Oval Office. But this is where most presidents sit, have their breakfast or lunch or dinner. This is where they have their newspaper delivered to them. And you've seen many movies where they show this room. And this is typically where presidents go to get their coffee, their breakfast, read the papers. They stack the papers up on the tables and sit there and read all the papers and stuff. Trump had that entire room gutted, torn down, the walls removed, all the way down to the floorboards. From the floorboards to the interior of the frame of the walls. Had the entire room taken apart and put back together again and remodeled. Why do you think he did that? And he did a tweet right after that. Where he talks about, boy, you wouldn't believe what was behind these walls. He didn't say. Now, most people are thinking, old walls. Old, maybe artifacts or something. No, that's not what he was talking about. There's something else behind the walls, and I think it was surveillance equipment. It appears that possibly the Obama administration, possibly the FBI, the CIA, who knows, may have wired certain rooms in the White House for sound to surveil Trump. If that turns out to be true, if we learn that, oh my goodness, that's bigger than bombshell. That's I don't know the word to describe that if we find out that to be true. But it looks like it's a possibility that may be true. Stay posted. I'll be back to you tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good day. Goodbye.